this way I see there is still a light in me. Carry onward thankfully, and let the light see what it sees.
I think one question that I am kind of grappling with, or sort of come back to from time to time when it comes to relationship to spirituality for myself, and also what I'm seeing in others and in the world, is around the question of morality and the relationship between morality and spirituality. I feel really strongly connected to this idea that I was introduced to early in my studies in anthroposophy, having to do with this rule, this principle of 3 moral steps for every spiritual step. But I don't often see this being played out or being practiced by people. And I think I wonder for myself and for others, what is that relationship all about, and how can we encourage each other to be more moral, I think. And I think also for me, I feel like my own relationship to spirituality is really about orienting myself to this universal force of goodness. That's kind of what it feels like to me when I think of what it means for me to be living my spiritual goal, living spiritually somehow. And then I wonder why isn't that kind of at the core of what we're doing and how we're living our spirituality in day-to-day life?
Yeah, that's great. Well, in a way, the work that we're doing on this channel with the virtues is really looking at virtues as aspects of moral development, but also could be seen as aspects of principles of love in action. And so for me, morality and love are deeply entwined. And when we look around the world today as, what's missing, what's needed, everyone in a way is getting a sense of this. Whether you're deeply involved in spirituality and believe in a particular spiritual tradition, whether you have a religious leaning or an actual atheist, there still seems to be this call for moral development. And in a way, there used to be this picture in the older traditions of God is love. It's like the common denominator between all the religions. But now it's kind of shifted from God is love to something about what is our moral responsibility. For me, that shift is actually a really important shift, because it actually puts us all able to work on the same page, regardless of spiritual or non-spiritual inclination. And that's really quite something. So for me, that is a key. So every step of spiritual development, taking 3 steps of moral development, for me is connected to the wisdom of the spiritual world and then the living practice of it. Because there's also that idea that if you know everything but don't practice anything, it can slay forces in your being. It undermines you, actually. And there is a certain amount of that going on, particularly because so much spiritual wisdom is available. It's all available. And to this time in our evolution, it's the practice that makes the difference. It's not how much you know, it's who you are. And who you are is transformed through your own moral development, not through the information you carry in your brain. And if a computer can know it, then we can be absolutely sure it's not enough. These are great examples are given to us today in this world. Because if a computer can... So what can the human being do that the computer can't do would have to link to something about spirituality. So I would agree with you. We're lacking in the practice, but that's part of the difficulty, because the wisdom of the spiritual world is so interesting and perhaps even fascinating for people. One could spend their life accumulating and reading And there is a participation that happens in that. One of the first aspects of the path is to study. But for me, that doesn't mean to say read books. It really means be a student. Be a student of your life. Be a student of the work. Always work as though you're in a place of learning. But that's the first step. And of course it goes on there. You don't give that up. You never give that up. You're never not a student of life and of the path. But it is also then to move your being into greater aspects of that transformation. So, this developing of the stone of the wise, the philosopher's stone, is really that transformative path. That idea of transforming coal into gold is a great image, an imaginative picture of this 24 karat gold, this pure gold, and these 24 virtues are really echoes of that in the human soul. So that's why I've taken on doing the virtue work, for that very same question. Where is the moral action? Where is the actual working, so that when you have a moral capacity. So there's a really great exercise that Rudolf Steiner gives. It says, recall a moment when you had an inspiration to perform a deed of love. Mm-hmm. And so that moment when you had that, this recognition, therein lies something that was already, there's something in you that comes out of you. And there is the key for me around love and morality. We think it's outside of us that's got to come to us, love, rather than something that I've developed in me that I can bring out of me. Deeds of love, moral virtue, that is how, for me, they come into the world.
Yeah.
So that's really one of the things I'm hoping people can work with. And the way that we're working with them is we have a virtue given every month and people can practice them. But it's not about doing empty actions, but having it come out of the heart that is moved into the deed. And that's different, because being good, well, we've had a few thousand years of being slaughtered with how to be good, and that doesn't actually work anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't work to follow the good.
Yeah.
It has to kind of unite with something in me and then come out into the world. It's a free deed in that way. And so the good today has that necessity of the free human being. And that's why I think this real true spiritual picture that you can really only love for as much as you are free. Is your deed is really good if it's a free deed. Is it a good deed if actually what I'm doing is so that you pat me on the head, or you think I'm great and grand, or you blah blah blah, everything we want something for.
Yeah.
But when you have that resolution to perform a deed of love, you get this glimpse of freedom. And then, people often think freedom is the fact that I have a choice. My experience of freedom, the real liberation, is experienced not in having a choice, but that I've chosen, and that being with that stream is this echo of liberation. So I'm working on that. So for me, when you're cultivating a virtue, you're working to really build that capacity that it is in you and comes out of you. Not that I acted here and then hopefully it will come back. Because even then, you're doing it for something.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than the other way, to give something.
Yeah. And I think there's this misunderstanding or sort of simplified assumption of morality is that it's this thing that's taught. And to kind of differentiate between this morality that's kind of taught as values and this sort of higher morality that comes out of us at some point that's more connected to love.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, of course, I think what we think about is teaching is that if we can have that loving moral atmosphere around a child, it, of course, has an effect on what they have as their palette of colours to work with in themselves in freedom. Say they've never seen a moral deed or they've never experienced love in their atmosphere, that's going to be shockingly difficult for some to then actually know how to paint that picture for themselves. But no matter how much love's there, they still have to work with it from within out. And I'm finding this to be one of the most interesting realities of human evolution. There was a time when thinking was outside. In the Greeks, they thought the thought was in the rock and the thing had everything to do with the thought. There was a reality in that, and slowly as the human being shifted consciousness, the thinking is now within us. This cosmic connection to this principle of consciousness and the content of thought through perception is now within me without the need of a perception. And here I have thinking now within myself, which was such a cosmic process that only the few initiates could think. We all can think now. And that same process, what was in the outer or was given from the outer, is now possessed by the inner space of the human being. But in that, it separates itself and becomes deadened. So we have to re-enliven thinking, bring it back to this cosmic connection. And that process of living thinking is really part of the esoteric path to develop that again. But now consider that with the nature of love and the nature of morality. It once was given. We were told, here's your commandments. And now as it enters in, it is actually in a way as by necessity somewhat deadened off. And it's up to us as individual human beings to re-enliven that and bring that back into connection with what's behind it. What's behind cosmic thought? What is behind cosmic feeling? What is behind these moral deeds? And how love in action has so much connection to that. But how different it is when it comes from the human being as an overflowing of what they have cultivated, like your own living thought. So we can have these extraordinary spiritual thoughts given by great initiates, and we can participate in thinking them. But when you really think them and they become alive in you, now they are reliving in a cosmic way. Something in you changes because of that. And now consider that possibility with morality.
Yeah.
What an extraordinary journey the human being is on.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, to kind of jump back a stage, when you were talking about this working on the Philosopher's Stone, another sort of theme that I'm really interested in is this idea of life, sort of with the capital L, life as almost a being there to teach us. And I'm really resonating right now with this idea of my journey, my task being about alchemizing life itself for sort of as an act of service for the world, and also just for the sake of my own inner transformation. And I guess I'm sorry to throw some big things in here, but I guess I'm just wondering if you can speak to this kind of role of morality and love, in terms of those sort of ideals or ideas that I'm kind of trying to play with in my head right now.
Well, there's this phrase from Rumi. It says, what you're seeking is also seeking you. So we have this idea in this dualized world that I'm here, you're there, here's the chair, there's the other. This is me and here is life. And as we work on this path, we realise actually this outer world has actually got something to do with this inner world. And we see this in various ways. There's this, classic example that Steiner gives when you're walking down the road and a slate falls off and hits you on the head. You have to imagine part of you push the slate off. So that there is this part of you that's calling you to your next stage of development that's actually participating in your life. So in a way, your life is one of the greatest books you're ever going to read. But like all great esoteric novels, the reader determines what they read.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that? You read a book and like 5 years later you read it and you go, my God, I understand this book now. But when I first read it, no idea. Because you've changed, your inner world has changed. And this is something that's very complex for people to understand because the intellect is so clever and so able to understand. It doesn't recognise that I have to take on inner shifts to read my life differently. And in a way, because I can read it differently, the life actually becomes different.
Yeah.
And therein is this alchemizing process. Life is trying to transform you. But unfortunately, many people are reading life as though they're in a chemistry lesson when in fact they're actually in a home economics class. And of course there's a connection.
Yeah.
But that's not the class you're in.
Huh.
So how do we learn to really read our lives? And there's some interesting aspects to that. This has been a really deeply, is the theme of my life, understanding who's writing the script.
Yeah.
Because on one hand we know that the forces of our best development is there, writing the book, and the double, the part of you that does not want to develop, that wants to stay the same, that wants to stay intact, that wants to keep repeating the pattern, repeating the theme. And one could say it repeats the theme because you haven't quite got the lesson, but actually it just wants the same story. And it almost hands every intimate partner the script and says, could you read that for me? And so we have there are quite a few writers to this book of your life.
Yeah, interesting.
And sometimes you have to discern that.
Yeah.
So everything happens for a reason, but not everything is good. And our discernment comes over our ability to make those inner changes. And that's why for me inner development is so useful, because you shift the instrument and therefore the life can be richer, more potent, more meaningful, because it is speaking on a whole nother level. And some of the greatest esoteric works get thrown out because we can't read them. Then we see this happening today in schools. People think, oh no, that story is far too sexist, we get rid of it.
Yeah.
Rather than go, well, it's woven with all of esoteric language which feeds the soul behind the framework of the intellect.
Yeah.
And it's so nourishing for children. No, genderized. Check it out. So when we can't read it, we throw out some of the, and that's what we're actually doing with our lives. We're throwing out some of the transformative gems because we don't know how to read.
Yeah.
So learning to read is much harder than learning to see. And so this is the same with the spiritual development. You can see on the astral plane much easier than you can read the astral plane. And we know that from our own lives. Spiritual steps show us a lot of the keys to spiritual development, because our life is already a part of the spiritual world. It's not separated. It's just in this dualized experience that we think it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So part of what we learn in esoteric training is really around this occult script, which also talks about the law of correspondences.
Yeah.
And so here we are learning this world. Look at all that's around. But how do we read it? How do we understand it? How do we understand it in the way that it deepens and enriches the human being and helps this evolution? Or do we not understand it so much that we create things to just destroy it?
Oof, big thoughts. Yeah. I notice also for myself, I've gone through phases, I think more so when I was younger, where I really felt like destiny was the writer of the script, and then other phases where I've really felt strongly like, no, it's my self-will that's writing the script. And it's interesting because it's almost like there's also these times when there's sort of this one or the other is being more called upon to be a writer. But I've never actually really thought of the double and kind of these shadow elements either being this holder of the eraser or like or someone who has the pen and you're thinking, oh, why is this happening again? But yeah, that's really, yeah, and how to write, how to read it is also really such an art, really such a thing to be learned.
And this is something, of course, this is a wonderful thing about life, but when you look back at your biography, at one point you read it as, oh, what a disaster, and then other times you look back at that exact same thing and you're like, what a blessing.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course we're all Zen masters in that way.
Yeah.
Because that is the reality, but we have to have that ability to be the onlooker to our life. And so finding objectivity or being a friend to yourself allows that. Mm-hmm. When we are so subjective, so bound up, we believe this is all there is. That's where we need to take that first step. Mm-hmm. And that's why meditation is so potent for people, because it gives you that first step of putting to one side that everyday self that has become the identity. The problem with that step in meditation is that when you let go of being all these things that build you up as self, you have to confront a certain level of isolation or solitude, because all of those identities give you a link to the world. You're a daughter, you're a teacher, you're this, you're that.
Right.
And all of those identities give you a link to others. But as you drop them all and you're really in your solitude, then you have to find something else in that relationship. And that's what meditation really allows you to do as the first step. Once you have that, then the work of the heart becomes more clarified. It's not then a subjective dance with everyone that you meet, because you have the capacity for that level of objectivity in yourself.
Yeah.
Now, people don't like to think of love and objectivity, but actually the work of love requires us to be able to have something to cultivate, to give. Not, of course you can learn a lot from what people stimulate so-called love in us. But it's a complex thing with desire and with grasping and attachment and all of those other aspects that we identify as love, which is often connected with sentimentality
and egocentrism.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, could you repeat what you, or if you can remember, about what you said earlier about love and freedom going together? Because I think that really speaks to that.
Yeah. I think this idea that we can truly love for as much as we are free.
Yeah.
So all of those patterns that we think is love, the love that is drawn out of the biology, the love that is drawn out of the blood bond, they're not free love. But then there is this idea of, where is love that is free? So you really recognise it, or at least I recognise it first in these moments when you have this resolution to perform a deed of love. Because in that moment you don't have to do it. But you recognise the freedom in it, and the freedom is felt in the activity of it. And then we start glimpsing that possibility.
Yeah.
But the falling in love with someone, that's generally karma at work, and karma insisting that you have time with that person. So we fall in love, and then we work out what the karma is. Yeah,
there's that destiny element going in there.
Exactly. The destiny is right. I love the idea of having all these people penning, and the angels trying to get around it as well.
And you just try to keep the shadow self enough at bay.
I think that's one of the things about it in a development path. It definitely brings clarity, because the two selves in you, this high divine spark and the everyday personality with all your karmic baggage and so forth, are so blended and bound within, and then meditation just brings them to a greater and greater distinction. The difficulty with that is you then later see yourself so clearly, and that's not easy. Because before, while all of that good divine stuff was mingled in, not so bad. It's all held in check. It's no longer held in check. And you realise what can be at play in you, and it's hard. That's a hard realisation.
Yeah. Can I ask also practically, because this is something I struggle with, is I find I have a very loud inner critic, and I think the inner critic often masks itself as the higher self.
Right.
And I guess I'm just, have a healthy, before you'd mentioned this idea of being a friend to yourself, like how to find the ways to hold your shadow self in check and accountable for unhealthy habits.
Yeah.
But not coming from this sort of the inner critic, instead being almost like a loving parent to yourself and not a harsh teacher. Something, there's all these ways to name these inner elements, but
so that comes into these soul principles, in a way that there is this intellectual soul aspect which is all about right and wrong and good and bad. It's like this that really isn't the higher I, but because it has this not discernment's not the right word, but it can really make distinction between things, good, bad, black, white. This is what I want, this is what I don't want. It feels like it's one step beyond that instinctual desire that craves things, longs things, so forth. So it feels like the slightly grown up side of us, but it's really far away from the divine.
Yeah.
My experience of the higher I is it is a loving presence that leaves me free, completely free. If the voice is not leaving you free, you almost can be clear that's not the higher I.
And that can even be kind of a good, not Rorschach test, but like a self-test to have, to be really asking oneself, am I feeling like I'm leaving myself free in this moment? So
if you're feeling that you have this inner dictator, even that you must do the good, that there is something that's askew there in the big picture. However, we have to work through those layers. Yeah. And that practice of seeing yourself as a friend can be the way to do it. But, I'm also then caution a little bit around that tendency people have is, I just got to give myself exactly what I want then, which is the other extreme.
Right.
But, and that's why I think that term that you used, a loving parent, is good, because you don't go, well, I love you so much, here to smother you with ice cream. Yeah. Because we know that it's not healthy. Yeah. So what is really healthy love? And that quality, there's that picture of that, to have that love like the sun, warmth and light.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Oh, so many rich thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I'm gonna have to kind of sit with all this for a while, but I think there's a lot to work with.
Well, what I love is your question is really questions that people. It's just, I love what's happening right now. There is a shift going on around religion towards moral, individual moral principles. And this is going to be so potent if we can grasp it as a collective. Yeah. Because then we can find a way forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a necessity somehow. I mean, I think it, for me, really speaks to the sort of consciousness soul age. It's really, that's what it's all about.
Carry onward thankfully, and let the light see what it sees.